Good morning and welcome. Welcome to everyone here in this space and those joining us on Livestream. I am Laura Shinham, Minister of Congregational Life, and I'm joined on the chancel this morning by Vanessa Rush-Southern, our Senior Minister, and Mari Magaloni Ramos, our Worship Associate. Thanks to our guest musicians today, the Bernal Hill players, as well as our pianist Bill Gaines and song leader Richard Fay. And to our tech team led by our wonderful Director of Communications, Jonathan Silk. Thank you to Tom Brookshire, who is monitoring the chat and available to help if you have any questions, and our ushers led by Linda Mesner, and to Judy Payne for our beautiful smelling flowers today. On this Sunday, when others are out running from the bay to the breakers, naked or in costume, to add to the challenge and hard work we here, those of us here, are gathering to talk about rest. Nap, even. So I hope you brought your comfy shoes, or if you didn't, feel free to take your shoes off like I'm about to do. Feel free to get comfy.
We will wear some clothes.
You might see blankets or scarves throughout the sanctuary. Feel free to grab one and cuddle up with it. We ask that you put them in the baskets in the back when you're done. Get as comfortable as you can in these old pews that need their own rest. And let us worship together. Please join me as we say our words of chalice lighting. Those of us joining via live stream, if you have a chalice or candle available to light on your own, you are welcome to do so. Let's say the words printed in your order of service. We light this chalice for the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the fire of commitment. We light this symbol of our faith as we gather together. Let us rise in body or spirit as we are able, and even if your body is able and needs to sit, sit. Or if you are seated, but you want to flop over and sing or not sing at all, do that too. Let's sing or hum or whatever you have energy for our opening hymn, number 90, in our gray hymnal, From All the Fret and Fever of the Day.
Dress up a little bit, and if I take off my shoes, I won't be able to get them back on. Sorry. From all the fret and fever of the day, let there be moments when we turn away, and deaf to all confusing outer din, intently listen for the voice within. In quietness and solitude we find the soundless wisdom of the deeper mind. With clear, harmonious purpose, let us then bring richer meaning to the world again.
There's more pillows. He's got it. Hello, I'm Worship Associate Mari Magaloni Ramos. If you are visiting for the first time or watching on video, we welcome you. You can follow along in your order of service, which is available on video and is emailed to everyone who receives our newsletter, which you can get by signing up through a link to our connection form that is on the order of service in it and in the video descriptions. The order of service also lists upcoming events and links to opportunities to connect, including our coffee hour, which takes place in the courtyard after the service. There's a few things we'd like to highlight today for our members. After the service, grab coffee and head to the TSK room, please. There is a budget meeting today from 12:30 to 2:30 p.m. to vote on the proposed budget amendment to fill the gap of the pledge shortfall for the coming year. And the nominating committee is pleased to present the slate of nominees for the 2023-24 Board of Trustees and the next nominating committee. Please check your order of service for details about that. If you are new to our church or to Unitarian Universalism, we invite you to come to our new UU class on Tuesday, May 22nd at 6:30 p.m. Oh, it's the 23rd. At 6:30 p.m., and it's led by Reverends Vanessa Southern and Laura Shenham. So please find the registration link in today's order of service. Or you can also join us for our newcomer orientation on Sunday, June 4th, after the service in the fireside room. Our Black, Indigenous, and People of Color group will be meeting on June 4th from 9:30 a.m. to 10:50 a.m., as it does every first Sunday of the month before the service. This sacred space of joy, renewal, and care is accessible on Zoom or in person in the Stebbins room for all friends and members of color. If you're interested in finding out more, please email us at bipoc@uusf.org. The White Allies group will be meeting tomorrow evening, May 22nd at 6:30 p.m. on Zoom to watch and discuss a video about bias. Please check your order of service to register. There is so much going on. Please check the back of your order of service. Thank you. And now it's time for our greeting, after which we will recite our covenant and doxology. So you can say hi, or don't. If it's too much, just kick back. There's pillows.
sit on the steps with you a lot.
Oh, please do. And you know what? There may be an opportunity. We're going to be inviting folks to nap, so come on up. I'll snuggle with you.
Oh, great.
That's not bad. That's embracing the thing, right? Oh. I forgot how much I should be. I had to move that. I had to move it down. Yes, you're like, hello. Good morning, Lori.
Thank God, because when you said smelled like somebody and I had my shoes off, for a second there, I was very afraid.
Oh, you know what? My teenage, well, he's almost 20. We shared a room last night. It was great to see that happen.
Hi, everybody. Pretty sure, Jonathan, can you give me a mic? I was pretty sure. Jonathan, can you give me my headset mic? So I thought I was pretty sure there would be no kids today, but we're all kids at heart. And who doesn't want a good story? And inspired by a mug that I will tell you about later, I decided to write a story. Once upon a time, there was a lovely creature that moved largely invisibly through the world. You couldn't see them, but you could feel them. There were signs when they were near. When they would come around, your eyes would get droopy, and the world started to soften like your focus was. And sometimes your bones seemed to turn to rubber in their presence. When this creature sidled up to you and threw their arms around you, unless you fought hard to escape their sweet grip or someone magically handed you a hot cup of espresso, you'd find yourself curling up just about anywhere. And even your purse or your backpack would feel really lovely underneath your head. Your grandmother's handmade Afghan, its divine purpose in the universe became crystal clear, and you'd get it out and tuck it under your chin and under your feet. And with that, your body temperature would start to drop, and your breathing, and your eyelids dropped, and you'd fall asleep. The creature was familiarly known as nap. Wise people all over the universe knew through the ages that infants and small children needed regularly to be in nap's company. Somehow, nap made them grow, heal faster from illness, and generally put them in a better mood. That was also true for older children and for adults. In fact, there were cultures at one time that scheduled their whole days, meal breaks, their work schedules, so that everyone could get home and lay down and sidle up to nap. And they were happy. But as humans grew older in age, it was generally true that nap became less welcome in our lives. And yet times seemed to be changing, even in places where historically nap had been revered. There was also this trend where people were giving less and less space to nap. Offices had no places to nap in these open work environments. And people started to do wild things like try and constrain nap to a very tight period of time, something they called power naps, though nap never wanted power. And if you listened to the way people talked about nap, you'd hear how bad a rap it was getting. People who hung out with naps started to worry because the culture told them so, that they were lazy or just plain unproductive. And in this world where people's phones needed to be on and calls and texts needed to be answered right away, nap was instinctively driven away. So nap was neglected in this world and increasingly shunned. And it's not entirely clear why, because the truth is, in darkened theaters, sometimes in church when the music was quiet or the sermon went on a little too long, certainly in college libraries around the country, a little white noise humming, humans found it impossible to resist the siren call of their old friend nap. And always, it was a good and gorgeous thing when they did. The truth is, without nap, the world became exhausting and not as centered or healthy as whole for humans, and some folks started to notice this. So slowly, an awakening, or rather a nappening, started to happen in places around this world. Some folks rekindled their relationship with nap during pandemic. Some folks spoke of nap's glory early in their retirement when they got to know each other again, and increasingly, people started to talk about the fact that we had been lied to about nap. Some revolutionaries and allies started making spaces, acts of resistance, gatherings involving napping together at all times of the day and in all places, and something about that felt silly but right. The toddler in everyone knew, in their old remembering bones, what life was like when nap was in it. And the world, maybe, started to shift slowly toward health and joy and right relationship and reunion, one nap at a time. And maybe the world began to live one nap at a time more happily ever after.
The words of our covenant are some of the promises we make to one another about what it means to commit to being in community, this community. I invite you to say them with me. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another.
From all that dwell below the skies, let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung through every land, by every tongue. De todos bajo el gran sol, sur y esperanza, fe, amor, verdad, belleza, cantando de cada tierra, cada voz. Amen.
One time, I found my cat napping in the bed like a little human. He was on his back, face up. His head was on the pillow, and he had the comforter pulled up to his chin with his little stick arms outside the blanket. And the only thing that would have made me laugh louder was that if he'd been wearing my sleep mask. He is a true Magaloni Ramos. My family is big on naps. My father worked the night shift and would attempt to sleep during the day while my okay, he's having trouble hearing it? Is it okay? You know, I can speak slower. Will that help you hear me better? I'll do that. I'm sorry? He's got it on. Thank you. Okay, so my father worked the night shift and would attempt to sleep during the day while my very rambunctious brothers and I attempted to keep the noise level inside the house to a faint racket. He became so desperate for sleep that he finally put a cot in his closet. We would laugh and say that while some families had skeletons in their closet, we had our father in ours. Rest was always seen as a priority in our home. No one was ever made to feel bad about taking time to rest. No one was ever asked what we were supposed to be doing. Rest wasn't seen as a misuse of time in my home. Rest was seen as deepening. Poems were written at rest. Guitars were strummed. Books were read. Things were pondered when someone was at rest. I don't remember certain activities being prioritized over others either. Anything that was important to any one of us was deemed worthy of enjoyment. My father loved to recite poetry, so we loved it too. My brothers and I spent a lot of time lying on the living room carpet, eyes closed, listening to records of poets reading their own works. My favorite was Langston Hughes. I have known rivers. I've known rivers ancient as the world and older than the flow of human blood in human veins. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. My mother loved the beach. I don't know what it was about the sand or the air in the Gulf of Mexico, but within seconds of arriving, our super high-energy mom would be sawing Z's under her straw hat. My oldest brother loved reading, so books were everywhere, and no one ever asked what we were supposed to be reading. Playing outside was just as important. The message I got growing up was that life simply had different speeds. My brother Beto was the most creative of us all. One time, we came home from a grocery run and heard a bell ringing. We found a bell connected to a string that had been slipped through a curved nail above the door frame. We followed the string along the wall and up the stairs to find my brother in his bed moving the string, which was tied to his big toe. 40 years later, it still makes me laugh. I'd say that was time well wasted. Beto was so much fun. We couldn't wait to do nothing with him. Once he convinced us to spend a huge portion of our summer tying thick spools of string together for our kites in hopes that we could surprise passenger airplanes with them. I remember climbing over our elementary school's chain link fence to spend hours in the field flying them. We chewed sweet grass and sour clover as we lay on our backs, languidly scanning the sky for airplanes. As our tiny kite specks tugged on strings so long it faded into the sky. We would talk some, but mostly we would just be. In between a long silence, I remember Beto saying, "If you close your eyes, you can feel the world spinning." I closed my eyes. He was right. I don't remember getting a message about what kind of life was worthy of living. It never occurred to me that pursuing acting could be considered frivolous or unrealistic until I moved to Silicon Valley and was openly sneered at by other parents. I wonder about the over-curated and over-scheduled children I saw when I was raising my son, Max. I can't help but wonder what they missed, what joy, what true gifts were extinguished in service of the popular idea of a successful life. I don't know if my parents were brave. Some might say they were clueless. I'm just glad my family celebrated life, which included rest and unstructured play. It is an inheritance that I have tried to pass on to my son. I made it a point to find a school for him that didn't give any grades or homework. His childhood moved at its own pace. He's a junior at UUSF now. He comes over sometimes just to relax with me. We sit under fuzzy blankets and watch our favorite Scooby-Doo episodes while our cat Kato snores between us.
Thank you, Leah and Martha and Jennifer. If you haven't already gotten comfortable, I'm going to encourage you to really dig into the comfort you might make possible in this space. You can come and grab a pillow if you want. There's an extra one up front. I would encourage you to do anything you need to really indulge in this moment, as wild as it feels in this structured space. So obviously, In a moment, I'll invite you to close your eyes. I mean, lie down on the ground. Really, come join us up here if you like to want to lie on the rug. Lie on the pew. There's some beautiful cushions underneath you. But above all, don't try to do anything productive during this period. And that includes that when we enter into a time of rest, please allow your desire to kind of keep reiterating the checklist of things you need to do when you go home and like snip that little thread and let it fly off with the kites that Mari's family used to fly. I don't want you to do your gratitude practice. If you call to mind all the people that you are grateful for in the world, or your meditation, the person you love, the neighbor you're kind of neutral about, and the person at work who's a thorn in your side, just do your meditation later. That's work too, in a way. We don't have to earn this time. We don't have to make good use of this time. No epiphanies necessary. Just surrender into rest. And as we do, let the music of beautiful chorus, one of their songs, wash over us. We'll have 4 minutes of full surrender to rest.
Please let me feel inner peace from my center at the center of me. Please let me feel inner peace from my center at the center of me. Please let me feel inner peace from my center at the center of me. Please let me feel inner peace from my center at the center of me. My heart is open, I am aware, in me is a knowing of love, love, love. My heart is open, I am aware, in me is a knowing please bring.
Spirit of life, be restored to us as we make space to rest and be restored. And may the restoration of all the broken places in us, in the world, be possible, be more possible by what we know and nurture in our bodies and spirits in such rest. Amen. Our offering now, which is for the works and the ministries of this community, will be both given and gratefully received. few years ago, for the holidays, a friend gave me a mug. It's from this restaurant in Austin, Texas called El Arroyo. Does anyone know? Oh. Well, it's a Tex-Mex restaurant that's been around since 1975 and is most famous, I think, not maybe so much for its food, but for this marquee sign that hangs out front that doesn't so much advertise lunch specials as posts humorous sayings, many submitted by the customers themselves. There are now 6 small collected books of sayings that have been up on this marquee sign, and lots of merch, Christmas ornaments, t-shirts, refrigerator magnets. Here are some of what are supposedly the best sellers, the sayings at least. Never laugh at your wife's choices. You are one of them. What if soy milk is just regular milk introducing itself in Spanish? Soy milk. Welcome to adulthood. I hope you like ibuprofen. And 90% of marriage is just shouting, "What?" from different rooms. I have a slightly more meaningful saying that accompanied the mug and is now framed in my office. I'll share it with you so you can imagine this sign. It's a photo of the sign one day that says, "It's okay if you fall apart sometimes. Tacos fall apart, and we still love them." And the gift that started this whole service off in some ways was this mug. It said, "Dear Naps, I'm sorry I was a jerk to you as a kid. The truth is, like Mari, I was never a jerk to Naps. But the world has been, I think. And the truth is that naps are coming back into fashion, I think, at least in some circles, and in part thanks to a minister named Tricia Hersey. So many folks of the last year had mentioned Tricia Hersey and her nap ministry that I took her book, Sight Unseen and Unread, her 2022 book, Rest is Resistance, as the minister's book club book for this month. You can still join. You can do a quick read by Wednesday evening or Thursday noon, and I'll send you the Zoom. But her work began as far back as 2016 with a blog and other social media and a necessity and an experiment. Hersey, who calls herself the Nap Bishop, tells the story of her work in her book. She was a single mom going full-time to seminary and working or doing free internships, and had suffered loss, and she says the ongoing trauma of poverty and white supremacy culture, when the reality of this up before dawn, make everyone breakfast, out all day, in the library at seminary until it closed at midnight schedule, and then home again, nearly broke her, but also broke her open to, well, what was broken around her. At that point, she did for herself the only thing that she could, the thing that she needed, which was to take rest. Inspired by her maternal grandmother, who took 30 minutes every day to rest her eyes, Hersey started to nap. And not only did she knit back together, but she noticed things in this experiment. She started to put pieces together. She noticed that the world didn't value her or rest enough to make room for both of them. She noticed the messages that she was getting that worked against a life of nurture. She noticed how, as she saw these messages, ones about our productivity and about our worth and our innate worthiness being tied to our productivity, how they tied back to capitalism, but more than that, tied back to colonialism and the extraction culture of that, and more than that, tied back to her ancestors, Black people in America exploited for labor. Her reading of slave narratives came to echo forward. Stories of Black folk on farms working in the hot summers, one in particular that a man tells about the work of being up before dawn and working beyond sunset, eating food that he and his family had stayed up late to prepare so they could take it with them into the fields, and eating it, he says, while standing, lest any time be lost to rest. These stories echoed forward to a woman who felt as if the world wanted nothing more than to squeeze her dry. And so Hersey started to write about what happened as she prioritized rest and reflected on the whole of it. What her undergraduate training in public health had taught her, but her body knew firsthand. What her experience in the Peace Corps had taught her about the legacy of colonialism in Morocco, I'm sure, but her body knew firsthand. What her eyes and her ears and her critical, alive mind and spirit revealed to her when she stepped back and allowed herself enough rest to see. Hersey writes, "The nap ministry has always been the personal experiment of an exhausted and curious Black woman artist, except that it didn't end with Hersey. She took the experiment beyond herself. She started not just to write about rest, but to organize collective napping experiences, what I like to call nappenings. In Atlanta, where she lived at the time, Hersey would rent out loft space or whatever spaces folks would let her use, and she'd fill the room. Oh, all of our pillows are gone. That's so lovely. Sorry. She would fill the room with blankets and pillows and soft music, and an open invitation would go out, and people would come, stretch out on whatever was available, curl up in the space for 30 or 40 minutes together. And as they did, she would walk through the room and bless them, rubbing oil into their wrists or temples, saying, "Thank you for living, thank you for resting, thank you for resisting." In these gatherings, she watched and she listened to what happened. There were people who would cry, like the woman who said there was no space for self-care in her life. There was the joy and energy of people as they rose together, rested. There were sweet connections that were forged in the vulnerable act of sleeping in one another's company. Hersey writes, "I was aware of what rest had done for me, but to watch it transform into a collective healing moment for others has been a complete blessing." What's the blessing? What happens when we rest? The bishop of Nap Ministry says this: "When we rest, we connect with the deepest parts of ourselves. This is also a moment of intimacy and vulnerability. As we prepare to deal with the harshness of everyday living, and it is harsh, rest becomes a space of physical and spiritual softness, an antidote to the hidden rage present in an exhausted body." Hersey also names, quote, rest as a beautiful interruption in a world without a pause button. She sees and reflects what she calls grind culture, the one we live in, the one that has less and less space and permission for rest, the reality of which she sees as a violence against body and soul, our bodies and souls, against our humanity, and more than that too. That culture, she names, is upheld by old, economically convenient, and false notions of religious and civic virtue. Grind culture is extractive capitalism, part of the same culture that separates the rich from the poor, that doesn't protect the marginalized, that enslaves past and present people in ways obvious and subtler to steal our wages and treat our bodies like sources of production only. Hersey writes, our divinity as human beings have been ignored and degraded, replaced by shame and guilt, and this is where the protest needs to begin. The insistence to dream, to imagine, all of which she thinks and has experienced begins in rest. Hence, the revolution begun with the practice of a nap. Rest, as her book title proclaims, is resistance. I agree with Hersey. I preach periodically about Sabbath for this reason, that ancient, gorgeously structured practice of rest, about how we claim space for healing and reimagining the world. And I bet you all know, and I definitely know, the ways in which grind culture cuts me off in great measure from wellsprings of vitality and vision. The ways in which, when we don't rest, we lose something key, also that ability to be stubborn and determined, which is part of what we need also to move the world forward, to forge the world we want. So I hear what she's calling us to, and a big piece of me, the most important piece of me, says amen. Nap, our good friend from infancy, from nursery school, of spacious, generous vacations, of the beach, of siesta traditions, from wise cultures of old, and still now in certain wise places and families. Nap, not a panacea, of course, but revolutions have to begin somewhere, and why not somewhere beautiful and fun? So, if inviting nap back into our world, a welcome guest, space and time laid out for us to be with them, if that's a way for eroding grind culture and so much else that the bishop names, I don't know about you, but I'm up for this revolution. Because we all know sometimes you don't need to work harder to get where you want to go. Sometimes you need to rest and dream and imagine another way there and do that. And sometimes you need to rest so we can enter the gorgeous, broken, waiting world the way we want to meet it, be the change we dream of. So, dear Nap, I'm sorry that some of us were a jerk to you. You were just trying to stop us falling apart like tacos. We get it now. I want us to end this morning's reflection, calling into the space Hersey's maternal grandmother, Ora, with her regular practice of resting her eyes, and who, when asked by her granddaughter, said, "I am resting my eyes and listening for what God wants to tell me." May we all make space for what meets us in rest. So if you will, just surrender with me for a moment, just a minute. Not because we earned it, because we got up early or made it across the race, or did extra chores or worked a hard week. Just because it's our birthright. To be whole. We connect with the deepest parts of ourselves when we are rested, says Tricia Hersey. It's a moment of intimacy and vulnerability. As we prepare ourselves to deal with the harshness of everyday living, rest becomes a space of physical and spiritual softness, an antidote to the hidden rage in an exhausted body. Rest is this beautiful interruption in a world without a pause button. Thank you for living. Thank you for resting. Thank you for resisting. In a moment, we're going to sing Spirit of Life, which is 123 in our gray hymnal. But those of you who would like to come forward and receive some lavender oil on your palms and be personally blessed, we invite you to come forward. Mari and Laura will be here to greet you, and we'll sing Spirit of Life until we are done offering blessings. Let's sing together.
Spirit of life, springs of compassion, in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice, rule Spirit of life, come unto me. Say, compassion, blow. See, move in hand, giving life the shape of justice. World need we close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
May we all reflect the divinity we know ourselves to be in the patterns of how we live and rest. And may we dream a little more and delight in all the healing and wherever it is that rest and dreams take us. And may our divinity and creativity and aliveness always matter more than any other measure of our worth or worthiness. Go in peace. Be well. Amen.